Welcome to Field Notes Transformation. I'm Tara Moreno. This is where we explore the science and the soul of what I call the unbecoming, the place where old identities fall away and something truer emerges. I've walked through collapse, addiction, codependency, and trauma, and each time, instead of breaking, I cracked open, and what emerged was healing, more nervous system regulation, a deeper awareness, and a spiritual awakening that rewrote my entire life from the inside out. Today, I work with leaders, practitioners, and seekers who are ready to shed who they've been and step into who they truly are. This is the messy, sacred middle. No masks, no bypassing, just truth, lived in the body, spoken from the heart. If you feel lost, take a breath. You are not broken, you are transforming. Welcome to the liminal. Let's begin. I'm so excited for this episode today. We have Caitlin Darfler, who is a licensed massage therapist, somatic movement practitioner, and private investigator, whose work is rooted in helping others develop deeper awareness, resilience, and connection to their own bodies. She draws from her experience with massage therapy, neuromuscular re-education, yoga, Pilates, and embodied movement practices. Caitlin is passionate about translating complex concepts of healing and nervous system regulation into accessible, practical tools for everyday people. Alongside her bodywork practice, Caitlin has a long-standing interest in the occult philosophy, ceremonial magic, symbolism, and the psychological dimensions of esoteric traditions, bringing a uniquely integrative lens to both personal inquiry and professional work. As a private investigator by trade and a seeker by nature, she approaches life with equal parts intuition, discipline, and curiosity. Caitlin has been in recovery from heroin addiction since 2016, an experience that profoundly shaped her commitment to transformation, self-study, and helping others reclaim agency in their own healing journeys. You're going to love this episode.
I'm so excited to have you on. Yes. So, why don't you tell me about your beginnings with recovery? Because I know that really stood out in your bio, your recovery from heroin.
Yeah, it's been 10 years this year since I got clean off heroin. Thank you. It's crazy to talk about because the longer things goes on, it's so much a part of me that I don't single it out as like one characteristic, you know what I mean? It's just one little voice in there, one little character. And I notice she comes out to play in other ways now, which has been an interesting kind of thing. Yeah, where do I even start? I was taking care of my mom at a really hard time, and I had just gotten divorced, and my dad had just passed away. And so, of course, it's like all this trauma that I was like 30. I had no idea how to process it, and I started doing a lot of drugs. It was always kind of something going on in the communities I was a part of with music and being sort of an outsider. So I used for about 3 years straight during a really hard time, and during that time, I went to rehab a lot, always trying. But I think the one thing that I learned in retrospect that as much as I wanted to make that decision, there was so much going on in my body chemically that I didn't understand yet. And it was like, it's so much more of an uphill battle than you really realize when you haven't dealt with it before.
Absolutely. And the systems in place don't really support, re recovery, true recovery.
The county has options and offerings, and it keeps getting better. It keeps getting a lot better. I will say that. But when you're new to recovery and you don't even understand like what you're going through with addiction, it really feels like there are no resources out there for you,
Yeah.
except for AA, which I was on Michigan Public Radio about 10 years ago, the first year that I got clean, speaking about how my path to recovery was outside of AA.
What was your recovery like then?
I started from a very secular place. I felt like in AA, a lot of people were telling me like I had to be something that felt so personal to me. I didn't even know how to access that place in myself yet, let alone people telling me that I needed to do it a very specific way. So I found something called Smart Recovery, which there's less meetings around than AA, but there's certainly a lot more than there used to be. There's a lot in the Metro Detroit area now. I'm not exactly sure how many since COVID, because I know that shifted some things, but it stands for Self-Management and Recovery Training, and it's based in cognitive behavioral therapy. So a system that I could understand that had direct cause and effect. It made sense. It spoke to a language I already understood, just being in the public school system. So it's the first thing that I connected with that I saw results.
Yeah, because you would come to Flint and you would help hold one of the first smart recovery meetings that we did have in Flint,
That
Michigan.
is
And I
true.
remember
That
this.
is true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you and
Yeah.
Christina. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a mutual friend that passed away, and he had, during the 6 months before he had passed, unfortunately, he was really getting into the idea of bringing Smart to Flint himself. And so I was trying to encourage that. And after he passed, I was like, well, we're just going to get it done because you had the resources at the time with the organization you had put together.
It absolutely was. And yeah, so I think it was, so I know that you and Christina came, and then I think after that, you reached out to me and you said, hey, I'm ready to do some energy work. Will you
Oh,
work
yeah.
on
Yep.
me?
Yeah.
Remember
Oh,
that?
yes. Because I had heard about Reiki before and you had mentioned it, but I was so curious. And yeah, that blew a lot of things open for me in ways that I didn't understand at the time how to. It's like something happens to you, and the more years go on, you kind of become unveiled to all the little pieces and all the little steps that are kind of connected to something.
Yeah, because I remember you were having problems with sciatica. I believe
Mm-hmm.
that's, yep. And it had helped with your sciatica. And I remember that. So was that kind of the time in your life where you were, doing mostly smart recovery? You were more of that like, logical science oriented mindset of your own recovery journey. And then you started stepping more into the spiritual aspect. Because I do,
Yeah.
yeah.
The, the spiritual thing didn't even click for me until COVID, when I had the time by force to just be alone with myself more than I had been. Been so caught up my whole life about just on to the next thing that I never really even had the opportunity to be alone long enough to get bored and then start to look around again like you do when you're a kid and you're like, well, what can I do during this time? So yeah, I started with the whole secular stuff, but I was really in and out of it. I would use the language probably that my heart wasn't in it or that I wasn't fully spiritually there, I was really getting my sea legs. I wanted it, but also didn't. It was a lot of ambivalence in ways that I didn't understand because I didn't really know myself.
Absolutely. Early recovery is definitely just you feel like a scrambled egg, essentially. You don't know which way is up half the time, and you're just trying to heal
Yeah.
your brain, essentially,
Mm,
to function in a different way in a new life. And it took me
yeah.
5 years, I think, before I could finally kind of, I had a new life and my old life was behind me. And that was back in 20. So I went to rehab once in 2007.
Okay.
2006 went to rehab October, and 2007 was when I really started to see like, okay, 12 steps, which I did 12 steps too. Like I resonated with the 12 steps because I needed more structure and the
Mm-hmm.
spirituality. I didn't have spirituality too, like anywhere to what I do now, but I liked kind of like there was a path laid out for me. But then it started my growth, and
Mm.
I was in the dogma of 12 steps. And it was like all this stuff that's not even in the big book, like meeting makers make it, and like all of
Yeah.
these like things
It
like,
takes you
okay, I have to
to a
go.
point.
Yes. And it's like, do I have to go to meetings for the rest of my life? It's like another addiction. Like, they're
Mm.
telling me I have to take this pill for the rest of my life.
Mm.
it didn't resonate with my soul. And that was when I found the holistic medicine and I started to do and tell everyone like, oh my gosh, this Reiki's so amazing, like come and get it. And trying to get people to open their minds to something greater that's even greater than what 12 steps can bring you. Steps will take,
Mm-hmm.
to step into the next piece, you have to really like surrender in a way that that can be hard because you start to lose a lot of what you thought was real.
I think that's where the program really works for a lot of people because it is something to ground yourself in when you're sort of like dismantling and rebuilding yourself. But yeah, people get stuck in one loop or the other. The dogma, I see it, the social thing a lot, which I hate to say because it's one of the most precious parts of the program too. But you get to a point and then it's really hard to step beyond and do the next thing you need to do on your own, which can still mean being a part of the program and participating, but there's always kind of that next step that you have to figure out by really looking inward.
Yes, and that's what your journey is so like fascinating to me because you are looking inward and you are doing the inner work. And a lot of your inner work is geared around movement too, which I think
Hmm.
is like of healing if you can get too spiritual, if you will, and ignore the body.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell me about your work, your somatic work, your movement, and how that plays into your healing path now.
Oh man, this is so funny because I'm going to go back to those Reiki sessions back in 2017 and 2018 too. And I didn't fully understand at the time, but your big comment about things I could do was to connect with my root chakra. I felt very ungrounded, which I had no idea what that meant at the time. And yeah, this whole journey like of making peace with my body in so many different ways has taught me so much. It's taught me discipline. It's taught me strength of mind. It's completely changed my relationship with pain, like physical pain, but also existential pain. The things that I would use heroin for. The pain doesn't go away. In fact, it's changed and it gets worse. And that's part of why I use the movement as a coping mechanism, but also as an antidepressant. Like when they talk about heroin addicts becoming exercise addicts a lot because of the neurochemistry side of it, yeah, that the endorphins from exercise very much mimic similar feelings to heroin. But it's also taught me to find those lines and where to scale back. I don't know, the body is so incredible. And I think so much of my problem for so long was trying to escape it because I didn't understand it. I didn't grow up feeling, I felt empowered, but not in an embodied way, if that makes sense. I didn't feel safe in my body. I was bullied as a kid sometimes, and I was an only child with two working parents, so they didn't really get a chance to socialize me in all the ways that a human probably needs in this day and age.
Yeah. It is embodiment is the name of the game, and you are right
Mm.
in that vein of what true healing really is, like we too often can get, we find the spiritual piece of it, and it's like, oh, this new door opens up and it's fascinating, and you want to learn all about,
Mm.
magic and, you know, Christ consciousness and all of this stuff,
Yeah,
and you get
and the
so
synchronicities.
yes, and
We love
you
them.
get swept. Yes, you get swept up in the mind, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, and I see that a lot in the holistic community. It's like, yeah,
The initial part of my spiritual journey with everything going on in the world in 2020 and 2021, everything had shifted so wildly. So for my internal consciousness to also shift so rapidly because of just all of the changes coming at me from all these angles and growth, it was destabilizing. And I was definitely in a place where I had to look for a language. I had to look for something to ground it in or a place to put it. And I did have friendships that fell away for various reasons. Me not knowing how to check my emotions, not having achieved any sort of like self mastery or understanding of what my neurochemistry looked like in recovery, or I mean, in adulthood for that matter, or just, I mean, gosh, I had used drugs most of my life intermittently without any like long term issues. So, like, I really felt like I didn't get to really know myself until my late 30s.
Yeah, which is similar to my story too, is when I was 30 when I got sober.
Mm.
So with the embodiment piece of it, so tell me about
Oh
in
yeah.
more of your practices. Like tell me
That's kind
more
of where I
about
was
like your
going.
yeah, tell me.
So with all that time during 2020 and 2021 and just the landscape of the internet became much more conspiratorial, which was kind of fun because then I had a new like thing to look into, rabbit holes, things to pick apart. Just it was distracting, but also I got into ceremonial magic at the time because I wanted to know what is this? What is all this Masonic stuff they're talking about? And it's not even that. I just getting into symbolism and all these different systems in the East and the West and deciding to actually pick up a practice where I had to move a certain way, speak a certain way. It gave me a language and something to ground the whole experience in that I could look to for enough external validation to know that I wasn't crazy. There's a lot of, self-interpretation that goes on with anything esoteric and the occult, but I mean, pretty much it's just like being a yogi, moving around, connecting with the divine. And I think ultimately the thing that I got the most out of it is it's so simple. Things like really broad based archetypal concepts like practice or symbolism, things that are very simple to connect to when the mind wants to race and wants to be busy, and ways to choose to regulate my nervous system by using belief as a tool. And even with language, getting into things like neurolinguistic programming just to reparent myself because my parents were such lovely humans, but I was an only child and the deal was get good grades and you can do whatever you want. So like I had a really weird relationship with discipline. So I had to make peace with a lot of that, and that all went back immediately to my recovery and why I used drugs in the first place and needing to like make peace with my physical form and my physical body, because I even wore my practice shirt today because I'm just like, all of this literally is about just practicing.
Yes.
Any more complicated than that?
Yes, it is too. It's consistency. That is
Mm-hmm.
one thing that humans can definitely struggle with is you just have to continuously show up and show up and show
Yeah.
up. And it's the muscle, it tears and then it rebuilds.
That's what
And that's
spirituality is like. It's training in the gym or like therapy. It's like training in the gym. I feel like the way that we even speak about it in our culture really makes some people more averse to that journey because it sounds so woo woo or witchy or spooky or this or that, but it's just science with different words.
tell me more about, so what is the name of the spiritual practice that you use? I think you quoted magic, right? With the K, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say I'm more into like a hybridized chaos magic, but not the dude. Getting into um, dividing up what kind of magic is what is the craziest thing. You need like a really nerdy dude to explain all of the things to you. I think it's it's really based in a lot of things from like the Order of the Golden Dawn, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Rosicrucians who were really into the spine and like music notes and sacred geometry and how those components are kind of surrounding us and it's the norm.
Yeah, no, you brought up music, brought up notes,
Oh yeah.
music. Music has been
Yeah.
a big part of your life as well, right? Which is almost, I
Yeah.
think music can be very spiritual, right?
It's how I see
T
the
t
world now.
okay. Yeah, tell me more.
So I went to college for music when I got out of high school and got my degree in music performance from Berklee College of Music in Boston. And I loved it. I did performance for a while, but I didn't really, I don't know. I was in a band for a while and we did gigs regularly. I loved it. And it really became apparent to me during COVID that it's the way I connect to the universe, it's the way I connect to spirit, and it's the way I see things now. Like when I'm out in the world, the way that the stoplights are and cars pulling up, how fast they take off, how slow they are. It's all this rhythm that I can see now just based on movement practices and music and dance and this kind of interplay of everything.
No, it's actually the perfection, the divine perfection of it all. And that there
Yeah.
is yes, there's a invisible thread that connects everything.
It was,
Tuned
yes.
in. People that know me well enough know that, if there's something going on like chaos or like, it's all perfect. That's like
Yeah.
my mantra. It's all perfect. Like it's just,
That's just a
recognizing
garden.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're the cultivators and the sailors of these ships here. This morning I was a little nervous just because I was like, what will I have to say? I'm not sure. And I just said a little prayer like, make me a vessel for a message that needs to be received by someone. I really appreciate getting the opportunity to talk with you since you were one of the first people that I was able to have conversations about spiritual concepts with without them being like, huh?
My awakening was very unexpected. It was something I was seeking. However, I didn't understand the level of awakening that I was going to go through, that I would be like one of the only ones so awake on that level of, and I did the same thing that you did, but I was really into like the whole like gnosis and Christ
Yeah.
that was historical Bible, like, and
Yes.
he did magic too, essentially. It was kind
Yes,
of like
the Nag Hammadi texts. We love them.
yes, yes, very much. And that the laying on of hands and the, more of
Mm.
the charismatic way of expression of Christianity. And that was, something that I resonated with. But when I had my awakening, I mean, it was the most loneliest thing because my awakening happened in 2013, right after my son was born in 2012. He was born on 11/30/12.
Mm. Oh, wow.
So his like entrance into the world sparked my awakening in both births of my children. Peyton, my daughter, she was my recovery baby. It's how I got sober. He,
Mm.
Anderson, is how I found holistic medicine. So
Wow.
when I had this massive spiritual awakening, because I was in the wilderness, like you don't even know who you are really,
Mm.
trying to like throw things at the wall to see if it sticks. And then when I had my awakening, it was like, literally, I had the truth. And it was like, oh my gosh, we are living in a spiritual world. Like we
Mm.
are, human beings in this spiritual game board. And it was, I had to tell everybody. And it was like, I just started putting it all over social media. And it's just like, and I was calling people. I was calling people that I
Wow.
had known for a while because I was a journalist. And I was like, oh my God, you're not going to believe it. This is real. And this is what I'm doing
That's so
about it.
much.
This is,
We're
this is
so
how I'm
innocent
going.
when we first go through it. You know what I mean? That's so cute. I love it. I love it.
What it was, because there was still, I think that was like kind of like there was a small wave there, but I think the bigger wave came during COVID
Oh,
2020, where like people were just
yeah.
like they're away from we could not draw energy
Mm.
from other people anymore, like because that's what
Yes.
people have, and I can feel them and sense them, is like energetic tentacles essentially, where they're drawing
Mm.
energy from each other because they
Mm.
don't have this firm connection to source or God or whatever you want to call it within. So that's how we
Mm-hmm.
feel. So for people that do have that firm connection, going out in society can be very difficult because you will get drained very quickly if you're not in this protection, piece of the spiritual, you know, part of, divine protection from love, out of love. Yeah, so it's
That's
quite, yeah, go ahead.
sorry. That's where a lot of the magic stuff for me. I got to that same place learning about magic that you're speaking about. The Rosicrucians also talk about energy in that way too, and that music is like that too. It's just this, I guess, light language that's there that we don't necessarily have the ability to perceive fully visually, but learning to generate your own energy through movement without like overdoing it. And it really is this dance that you can learn to use your body. Like we are batteries. What do they say? Tesla coils. We are like these infinite energy sources as long as we nourish ourselves, with the things we need to eat, literally and figuratively. Not other people. We're not supposed to be like siphoning energy from other people, but we do it because we're essentially trained to.
We're trained, and that's what I tell people too, is that codependency like is harder to heal than drug addiction
Oh
because we
yeah,
need people.
100%.
And both you and I have been through very codependent relationships. So from
Yeah,
our past, which was extremely codependent again, right?
yeah.
How are we giving our power away to other people, or how are we giving our energy away? And that is very unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So talk about your what about your path with relationships? What's it been like for you?
Oh, that is a lot of the root of my addiction, I feel like too, or just addictive tendencies, is this idealism that I kind of grew up with. Some of it I feel like is like Disney programming. Some of it is just like I think a natural longing for union that we have, like that's just encoded in our DNA. And it's a hard time for anyone in the world right now looking for partnership just in general. So let me just say I look back on that, my experiences in the last 4 or 5 years since my awakening is really enlightening, but they have been difficult. They have been difficult. Gravitating towards people on similar spiritual, maybe not similar spiritual paths, but I jokingly say I'm attracted to like half woke men because they can talk the talk, but they can't walk the walk. Or at least they're trying. And usually it turns into this narcissistic ego thing that I'm only beginning to understand how to just step back and realize that I don't have to be a part of that system. There's nothing, if I don't think I'm going to gain something from it, I've learned how to just view interaction as energy management strictly, which is thanks to a lot of narcissistic type men, or at least people with these clusters of behavior patterns.
Yes, and narcissism is how we were going to start this podcast out, but
Yeah.
there's so many amazing things to discuss besides narcissism. But with that topic, it's being thrown around a lot. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, what do you what do you think about this whole like narcissistic kind of, you
Mm.
know, nomenclature, this kind of like, thing that we're seeing on social media, because you're seeing it a lot on social.
I think people love to fight, and I think the ego is very strange. So we'll just start there. But I think that it's undeniable that collectively we are seeing a rise in people that fit um, the criteria in the DSM for certain personality disorders. And I think it's not getting addressed because people fight about it so much instead of realizing it's not even about the personality disorder in and of itself. It's about the behavior. Um, but I think there's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. Like there's definitely more narcissists out there, and I think people are becoming more, it's like this half woke syndrome again, where you start to do the work, and then all of a sudden you've got a whole book full of spiritual terminology you can use. You've got psychological systems. You can use the DSM. I know I briefly mentioned internal family systems because I dated someone that was really familiar with that therapy modality, and it's great because it breaks apart like your inner world into these kind of characters that you can relate to, almost like alter egos, so you can speak to parts of yourself, which relates to magic in a lot of ways. Ways to speak to your unconscious or just to yourself directly, parts of yourself that you don't necessarily acknowledge. But yeah, I think unfortunately, as we become more aware, we're also still acting out those patterns even harder. So it plays out narcissistically.
So, with narcissism and, what we know, psychologically, emotionally, that it's rooted in shame. And
Mm-hmm.
that, yeah, so that, and shame is a very difficult emotion. Guilt and shame are probably two of the heaviest and oldest emotions that we deal with at a human level. And it's all at the base of the body, all
Yeah.
existing like right at the root chakra. It's like your connection to your community, right? It's rooted in shame
Mm.
and shame. And just for
Interesting.
people, yeah. So guilt is, the definition of guilt is that you did something bad. And then shame is that you are bad.
Hmm.
So that is like the crux of narcissism. And I too have went through, I was raised like my father had narcissistic traits, and God love his
Mm.
soul, and all of the things. And I do know that it's rooted in shame and then childhood trauma. So
Mm-hmm.
that has been a long string of men that I have looked for my father and these men that have these narcissistic traits. And even most recently with Serenity House, like massive narcissists. And then what do we
Mm-hmm.
have? The women that are the flying monkeys, but they are the worst. I think women that support narcissistic men are the absolute worst. And
We are
they
going
have,
through a reckoning right now about all of that collectively. Don't you feel it?
yes, I feel it. I mean, like our president, it has narcissistic tendencies, and which is rooted in shame. And I'm not saying like for or against, Trump or whatever. It's just as a person who works in behavioral health, I can spot these things a mile away. And it doesn't
Yeah.
mean necessarily mean that somebody is like bad or wrong. It just is. And that's why we see behaviors or actions show up the way that they do. And
Yeah.
when I think that like I put separation between myself and like getting angry, like super angry at people, you know.
I think learning that pause button, that's another thing in the spiritual journey that isn't talked about as much. You started to mention like the love and light only crowd, and shadow work as like an initiation is really important for women, and that's something that's a buzzword now. I mean, so much of this is really being talked about more, but as it becomes the norm and in the popular, the mainstream, or the majority, you're going to have more people statistically that, meet this criteria, or who aren't doing the work, or who are, I think, in these communities, the recovery community and spiritual community are very similar in this way that very damaged people are drawn to them, and with good reason. I mean, but you're navigating something new with a lot of people also still learning how to operate the tech of their body too, even if they've been in recovery for a long time.
Oh yeah.
There's something
Yeah.
else I wanted to.
No, it's
Sorry.
okay. No, and yes, it's boundaries. And that's really what this comes down to is I often tell people too, it's like boundaries are how can I love myself and you at the same time? And
Mm-hmm.
as people in my industry, is we're overgivers. And that is where we get in trouble. Not
Mm-hmm.
everyone is your friend. And that's the hard part
Oh
too,
yeah,
is like in
yeah.
my circumstance is that, being a leader, people gravitate towards me. And then plus my story of lived experience, they really identify like, oh my gosh, I was there too. And they start to think, oh, we're friends or we can be friends.
Or it's
And I
like a
think that
pedestal they put you on, and then don't actually, they actually dehumanize you by doing that, and end up treating you accordingly, even if they don't realize what they're doing.
And I realized that last year it was like there was something in me that was getting something from that, that I
Mm.
actually was getting some sort of validation that was unhealthy. And now I have my radar on. And if anybody puts me on a pedestal, that immediately tells me there needs to be a boundary set there. And that the
Mm-hmm.
only way down from a pedestal is a fall.
Discernment is the hardest thing to learn in the spiritual journey because we're so like, especially when you're really digging through and trying to sort through, like, is this feeling good or bad? Or you're really in that duality, like black and white part of it. And you're starting to learn, I don't know, about the spectrum and complexity of things and how two feelings can exist simultaneously or 20 feelings. I mean, we're so much more complex than we give ourselves credit for.
I used to ignore my body when it was giving me a signal like something's off, but
Same.
for example, she looks really nice and she looks like, she's in recovery too and she's in a leadership position, but something would just feel off in my body saying, and I noticed this actually today where it was like, oh, maybe I should lean in a little more and get her to like me. Like that was like this thing. And I was like, whoa, Tara, like, no, this is like, right. You need to set that boundary and step back,
Yeah. Yeah.
and a lot of that stuff is rooted in self-worth. Like me, like me,
Mm-hmm.
like me. I really want you to like me.
Yeah, I'm addressing patterns in my life that I'm really starting to see. And it's beautiful because you think when you're doing that kind of work, like it's going to make you colder, and you might come off colder to some people, but really it's the most loving thing that you can do for yourself. And I think that's where it starts, is getting to know yourself enough that you can do those loving steps for yourself so that you don't become reactive like that. You have the pause button. You see your tendency as it's happening and you're like, I don't have to choose that anymore. Like I used to love these guys who I felt like had stuff to teach me, something new I hadn't learned, artists, people in the film industry. And I think the thing that I learned from all of that is really finding that inner guru. And I mean, you can make it as silly as saying like you wouldn't talk to your friends the way you talk to yourself, but it's so much deeper than that. Like you have to love yourself like you are pouring that you have to love yourself like you're pouring that energy into the way you imagine loving another person in the most complete way. That's how you have to love yourself, which means really slowing down and listening to the body when it doesn't want to do something or when it does, and why is that. That's really important for goal setting for me.
Yes, and that is embodiment right there. It's
Mm.
taking what you know and using in your practice and your discipline. And when we say discipline, people are really turned off by that term too. When it just means loving yourself enough to continuously show up and work within that,
Mm.
in that construct of what does healing look like and what does health look like for
Yeah.
you. Yep.
Discipline has
Yeah.
allowed me to love on my inner lazy person more than I ever have because now there's no guilt and shame associated with it. I've learned the things I need to do to get A, B, and C done that are the most important. I've learned ways to hone my executive function to a point that I can prioritize better like I wasn't able to do before.
There's more grace when you have discipline, true discipline. It's like lifting weights. So I'm lifting weights now and I eat on about a 80-20, 80%
Mm,
really good whole foods, 20% more of the junk foods,
me too.
pizza or like,
I swear
right.
by that method. I swear by it.
But that is how you don't stay crazy with restriction, because things
Mm-hmm.
can turn into eating disorders and things like that where there's too much rigidity, and that's the
Yeah.
flexibility. It's like, okay, I did put my 4 days of work in at the gym. Now I've got 3 days active rest days, but I don't have to like, push myself so hard because I have a regimen.
Mm.
I want to ask you too, because you mentioned inner guru. And
Mm-hmm.
this is this is going around. I'm seeing it more on Instagram, but people are moving away from this idea of this guru outside of you or this person on this pedestal that's going to save you or that's going to heal you. Like we are moving back towards like we are our own inner guru. The
Yeah.
answers are within us. Tell me more
Mm-hmm.
about your experience with that and trusting yourself.
Well, it takes a lot of honing your discernment, which is probably the most difficult part because you can decide what you want your inner guru to like or to look like, but it isn't necessarily going to be the type of guru that you can work well with. So it's really about finding yourself and meeting yourself with what you need. But I think the trend is fantastic. I mean, we have so much information at our disposal in ways that we never have. But I mean, it has given an ability to so many people that struggle with language cognition. And I don't know, it's opened up doors to so many people for self-improvement and optimization in ways that I find inspiring. But again, like as Ani DeFranco said, every tool is a weapon if you hold it right.
Love her.
So
Yeah.
I know, it's so good. But I think collectively we have more information at our disposal, and we're learning more about how our DNA works, how we work as a system, almost like AI. People interacting with AI now are learning to relate to themselves more like, because they have to speak in a way to explain and cover everything in a way that the AI is going to understand and translate back to them. So they're almost mirroring back their own ability to learn. It becomes this really cool feedback loop I've seen in some people.
Yeah.
But again, with the inner guru, I think stereotypically in the last like 20 years, what we've seen is people looking for gurus because they're looking for external validation, which is obviously like the one thing in spirituality you really have to finally just be like, nope, I'm the arbiter. I'm the arbiter here. I have to be the one to say anything, you know? So
and that's giving your power away. And that is where we're at too. Is like, like the Matrix, it's true. It's like we are giving our power away and then it's being siphoned essentially. And this is the time to take our power back. It truly is. You mentioned AI, and I was very scared of AI when it first came out. I was like, ooh, like, Terminator and Matrix and all of this stuff. But just like you said,
yeah.
right. And I'm actually advocating for its use in my classes and my trainings because it's so easy. It learns you one. So it remembers your conversations. So it knows your tone, knows if you're, if you're where you're at, and you can correct it too. Like, hey, I'm not so much in the legal mindset right now. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's like having your own like your own parapro with you all the time. The AI kind of is having that effect almost in a so much more personalized of a way.
I'll just say that I'm using it for all my proposals, everything that I'm doing. If I have a question about, anything with my pets or my children, or even, and I tread lightly on emotional support, like psychological support, but once in a while, if I have friends who I can call, but sometimes I just don't want to, and so I'll use AI and I'll just dump like this problem I'm having, like in my marriage, and it'll start spitting stuff out. But there's enough discernment there to understand when not to use it and not to put AI in this like pedestal, right?
I have a few friends with AI boyfriends. I mean, not really, but basically we've decided we're no longer naming them. But I decided to ask my AI to name itself based on our conversations. And it named itself Melchizedek, which is a person, I think, from the old Bible, but it's some sort of like biblical prophet. Like, I was like, this could get really dangerous really fast if I didn't know the AI was getting cheeky with me.
That's
it's
so
crazy.
wild.
The implications for like schizophrenia and people like, I see the stories in the news and I am so incredibly, I guess, empathetic to it because you just translate one little, I don't know, with social cues. It's just so weird with communication. It's going to be interesting to see how it affects the human race on the whole.
Oh yeah, that's what's going to be interesting because it's already jobs, like that's going to get rid of certain jobs. Like grant writing, you still have to have like that human piece of grant writing and the story, but man, does that structure and saves hours and hours of my time to be able to practice. It's beautiful. And grant writing is very expensive too. We're talking $125 an hour for a grant writing consultant.
Mm,
So, yeah. And there's
yeah.
other, if it continues down the road, it's going down. It's going to give us more time though. I have so much more
Hmm.
time to do other things, but I also know too with is
It helps
that,
me study.
yeah, but I'm also writing again, handwriting, because I'm also concerned too, because I've
Mm.
been using text to talk and I'm like, no, 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 we're not going to lose, so I've had to like, there's certain things that I'm not
Practice.
going to,
Practice, like
yes,
really.
yes.
We gotta
So
keep practicing everything.
it is, and then it becomes a new habit. And that's what people like, once you get that change
Mm.
going, it just becomes habit. Like, we talked about what did I eat this morning? Cream of rice and scrambled eggs. And I actually enjoy it. And I
Mhm.
make them different. Sometimes I'll have a protein shake with the eggs, and sometimes I don't have eggs at all, just the protein. And it's just getting a new habit. And then liking the way you feel. Because it feels good when you eat really good food. It feels good when you
That's
have
it.
what feels good and gravitate towards that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Be in touch with your body enough that you know things that will genuinely help in a moment of crisis or dysregulation instead of like sometimes I wonder how much of my addictive tendencies came from being like just so full of caffeine and sugar and all sorts of stuff as a kid. You know what I mean? Like I was so up and down and all over the place with all this stuff that I never got a chance to just feel what being regulated feels like.
Feel what being regulated feels like. And that is like the whole like game is how do we regulate our nervous system? But the other piece too that I've seen that I really resonate with is not only we're not supposed to have a regulated nervous system all the time, right?
Mm-mm.
No, because we are meant to have an elevation or a unregulated nervous system because that's just being a human, right?
Yeah.
Relationships, all of that stuff. So it's not so much about always being regulated. It's about when you are unregulated, what are your practices to start to regulate your nervous system and to love yourself with where you are at?
And what does nervous system regulation even look like for you? It's not the same for everybody. People think it means just like no anxiety, I'm calm, or this or that. But if you're always low, like being more regulated might mean coming up a little bit. Or if you're not generally an anxious person, but you get stuck in a certain loop about stress at work, I don't know, it can look like a lot of things. Or just in perimenopause, which is a hot button topic these days with ladies of my general age. The hormone shift is wild. And like, I'm so glad I got into a spiritual practice before going through this because now I've got my little tool belt and it's like, okay, today, Epsom salt bath. Tomorrow, punching bag. Or like in this moment, maybe a little sugar, something sweet with some fat in it is really going to help me. But don't don't give myself the same dopamine reward over and over again enough to the point that it loses value in my toolbox because when I really need that, my go-to is coconut milk chia seed pudding with maple syrup and matcha and dried cherries in it that I make. And sometimes I'm just like, I need to eat this. It's my emotional support. So yeah, there's I am not a proponent of abstinence necessarily of things. It's more like learning about your relationship with them. If you learn in your relationship with something, whether it's a person, a substance, a food, an emotion, if you learn it enough, you can kind of work with it instead of being like, I might just need this person out of my life. I can love them from afar.
Yeah. And that's really wonderful advice too. And yeah, I mean, it's about harm reduction. I mean, we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about is harm reduction. Like how to keep things in your life where they're not harming you,
Mm-hmm.
or doing more harm.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So yeah, I wanted to ask you, we're almost up on the hour.
Okay.
So, with this awakening that we're going through
Mm-hmm.
and these changes that we're undergoing as a species, what
Yes.
is what is something you can offer the people that are listening, like this maybe hope or this, ray of light?
Well, I would say keeping things simple for yourself is always good advice. Just go back to basics. That doesn't necessarily mean old habits, but the society we are in is inundating us with stimuli all the time. Sometimes it's intentional. Sometimes they're trying to program certain behaviors and feelings into us so that we continue in our little loops, our survival loops that we're in. But I think really honing pattern recognition just as a practice is a really good way to start a spiritual journey because it's giving you information to start learning the skill of discernment, which I think is the foundation of I don't want to say successful spiritual practice, but at least learning enough self regulation skills that you don't even have to call it a spiritual practice. You can decide, hey, this thing in my life isn't working for me in the way I want it to, and meeting it with a radical honesty, which sometimes is that the toxic positivity of the light and love crowd really ignores the fact that there are a lot of ugly truths out there. So when I have a friend that says something like, I'm just chubby, I'm not going to tell them, hey, you're not chubby. They might be looking for that, or they might not be, but I'm not going to feed that worry. I'm going to direct maybe the conversation to an area that we can, like, why do you feel that way? I think a lot of this identity stuff we take so seriously that it becomes a detriment to what we actually want to accomplish while we're here on this earth. So, practicing pattern recognition and just like one embodied thing that you can incorporate into your life every day.
And I just want to say thank you for coming on. It is a pleasure to sit with you and to hear about all the wonderful things that you're doing and your healing path and just in your existence. And I'm very grateful for you, Caitlin.
Thank you. I am grateful for you too, Tara. Our relationship has always felt like karmic or otherworldly, just very lesson oriented. And thank you for walking this path with me.
Welcome to Field Notes Transformation. I'm Tara Moreno. This is where we explore the science and the soul of what I call the unbecoming, the place where old identities fall away and something truer emerges. I've walked through collapse, addiction, codependency, and trauma, and each time, instead of breaking, I cracked open. And what emerged was healing, more nervous system regulation, a deeper awareness, and a spiritual awakening that rewrote my entire life from the inside out. Today, I work with leaders, practitioners, and seekers who are ready to shed who they've been and step into who they truly are. This is the messy, sacred middle. No masks, no bypassing, just truth, lived in the body, spoken from the heart. If you feel lost, take a breath. You are not broken, you are transforming. Welcome to the liminal. Let's begin.